Is the Insta360 X4 a good camera for creating car content? Well, today we're gonna test it out. My buddy Ryan lent me his Insta360 and I've been looking for a good camera setup for the DF Goblin. As you guys know, the DF Goblin is an open frame car and it has bars everywhere, so I have a lot of mounting points for cameras, but instead of running 3 or 4 GoPros, I wanted to condense my camera setup down to be as simple as possible. And since it is a manual open cockpit, it's a little hard to carry a bigger camera with me like the one I'm filming on. So the Insta360 seemed like a pretty dang good option. I could just mount it up with a bar mount clamp and hit record, and it gets a 360 angle, and I can set it to any direction that I want. 1 or 2 of these would probably be really good and would pretty much satisfy my camera needs inside the car. However, I haven't actually tested it yet. So today in this video, we are going to be testing it out on the Goblin, seeing if it is actually a good camera to get if you want to create content with your car, and most importantly, if it's worth the money over something like a GoPro. We've been making videos about this DF Goblin now for about the past year. In the last video, we wrapped the hood, put on some Christmas paper, we put a big wing on it in the spirit of the Christmas season. Speaking of which, it is Vlogmas, which means I am uploading every single day for the month of December, at least I'll be trying to. So if that sounds cool to you, be sure to subscribe down below so you don't miss any of the videos that I put out in this month or any videos after the month of December. I will be continuing to put out videos, it's just December is going to be full of content. With that said, let's go ahead and go test the Insta360 camera and see if it's worth buying. Now on the DF Goblin, as you can see, I have a bunch of areas to mount. It is basically one big roll cage, so I can get a pretty standard mount like this one I got on Amazon. I'm gonna link everything down below in the description of this video as an affiliate link. Help support the channel, and if you decide you guys wanna buy any of this stuff, this is the exact setup I'm running. So far, I think this is gonna be a pretty good deal. We've got the Insta360 X4 set up right here. I think I can mount this in any direction. I went ahead and mounted it horizontal because 1, I think it looks better. It doesn't block my line of sight as much, whereas if it was vertical, I think it would be more in my line of sight. I think you can mount it either vertically or horizontally. I just decided to do that since it is a 360 camera. I think you could still mount it even parallel to the car and get the forward and back views as well. But one of the main things that I am concerned about is audio quality. This being an open cockpit car, I want to see if the audio out of the camera is any good, or if you need to run something like an external mic like I'm running right now. So we're gonna go ahead and fully switch to the X4. I'm gonna set this camera down, and I'm not gonna use any equipment other than the in-camera microphone and the camera itself. So this could turn out really good, it could turn out really bad, but we'll find out. This is my first time using it. And then once I'm done driving a little bit, I'll come back and give you guys some of my thoughts. Okay, so I have fully switched to the X4 now. It is hard mounted in position, and theoretically, since it is a 360 camera, I should be able to walk around like this and you still see me on camera. Now, I'm not entirely sure how that editing software is gonna work, and I'm not sure how the audio is being picked up either, but we're gonna go ahead and hop in, go for a bit of a drive, and see how everything looks. Now, my only concern with the camera mounted where it is it's kind of above my head. I think you might be looking down on me a little bit. If I change this in the future, I think I would mount it down a little further, maybe a little more in line with my face, but I'm realizing I need to push the car out. Okay, so one of my biggest concerns with this setup the way that I have it is you guys are kind of sitting above me right now. So you might be looking down on my head, which that might not be the best view, but it probably looks really good looking forward and back behind me. It really just depends on what you're going for. The only change that I might make is I might lower this down a little bit to be more in line with my face. I just don't want it blocking my line of sight. The other alternative is I get a second 360 camera and I mount it a little further down or back behind me somewhere so you get multiple views. But let's go ahead, start up the car, and get going. With the wrapping paper on the front, I can already see it kind of coming off in a couple areas, so I want to be a little careful. I don't want to have the wrapping paper just fly off as soon as I start driving. we're gonna take it kind of easy. I don't even know if you guys can hear me right now. It's probably pretty loud with the engine right there. I'm hoping we can maybe do some voice isolation or something. But for most of this video, I have it set to auto 4K 60 so that you guys can see what it looks like and sounds like directly out of the camera. And depending on the results, we might do another test eventually with like some microphones or something to see if that's any better or worse than just running it out of the camera. The key with this setup is I'm trying to make it as simple as possible. Still having a little bit of trouble getting into gear, but I think I know how to fix it. Camera's holding up there pretty strong. I'm pretty happy with that. But I want this to be as simple as possible. So if I have to add microphones or more cameras, it doesn't become as simple. As I was saying, if I have to add more microphones or cameras or anything like that, then the setup isn't as simple as just putting the camera up and hitting record. So I'm hoping that the audio is good enough that you can hear me and hear the car and everything else without a bunch of wind noise. If there is a bunch of wind noise, then maybe I can mount it below the windshield and that would get a little bit better sound quality. But the other option is I just run a wireless mic. So we'll see what the deal is. Just keeping it as simple as possible. I want to do a test around the block a little bit and then go through the Addison tunnel, because the tunnel is a very fun experience, and I want to see what that looks like on the 360 camera. Now I know the 360 camera has a couple of features like auto edit and stuff like that. I don't know how I'm going to edit this, whether I can edit it, if I have to edit it in the app first and then export it to my computer to link up with the rest of the footage. That adds a step of complexity. I don't know if I can edit 360 video in my editor, and I guess it just depends on which editor you use. Fire truck. My wing behind me is a little wobbly, so I might be able to brace that, but I'm sure you guys can see it. Actually, I'm curious what you guys are seeing, whether you can see everything, if you can see me okay. I'm wondering if the glare of the sun is going to be a big issue. I'm hoping that this camera is quality enough, but running an auto setting might inhibit that a little bit. So, but again, I'm trying to make this as simple as possible. I know most people who make content, the more simple it can be, the better, while maintaining quality. So, from what I've heard, this camera can do that, but today we're finding out. Okay, so I had to cut my test drive short for two reasons. One, the Insta360 ran out of battery, so I got quite a bit of footage, but I'm not sure if it caught it. One of the issues I started having is as soon as I went through the tunnel, is it started to make a noise from this side of the engine, and I found out pretty quick what it is. As you can see right here, here's my serpentine belt. It looks like that the belt is starting to come apart on me, and I know why. This is a new belt. With a pretty quick examination, I found out why. Down here you see my air compressor, and I'm not sure if you can see that, but it's not fully set flat on that air compressor. It's actually been rubbing against this air compressor pulley, and it's been slowly cording my belt. So this was what was making the noise over here. So now I have to probably replace my belt. That's probably fine for now. I don't think that'll chew the whole belt. It's only one cord out of like 6, but it is definitely not the most ideal situation, especially on a car like this. So that will probably be replaced here soon. For now, I'll just have to live with the clacking noise. I might try to fix this right here, but yeah, I know that doesn't necessarily relate to how well the camera operates, but it was a factor in today's video. So there's a couple things that I want to look for. I haven't reviewed the footage yet, but there are a couple things that I want to look for. One, is the audio good? And if the audio is good, is it good enough that it picked up this noise, assuming the recording didn't stop before that? The other thing I want to look for is my mounting position. Is it too high? Is it too low? Stuff like that. And then the other thing is the sun. The sun is very harsh here in Texas. As you can see, it is December and it's still very rough. So I want to see if that is a issue with this camera in auto 4K 60 settings. Other than that though, if all those things are at least adequate or they're manageable, I think this is a pretty good camera. I can leave it mounted up here. I can leave the mount in place, and I can just remove this pretty easily, and I don't even necessarily have to take the camera off to charge it or to switch out the SD card, which is a good thing. But even if I did, it's pretty easy to just unscrew it or screw it back on. Now, I didn't buy this camera and it wasn't given to me. I'm borrowing it, so this is a completely unbiased review. So far, it's pretty good. I will have to look at the quality. So my initial impressions are positive. I will say there's probably some adjustments to be made, and I'll make another video. But let's go inside, let me review the footage, and I will give you guys my final thoughts. Okay, so for the past about 30-45 minutes or so, I've been messing around with the Insta360 software to see how the footage turned out. And so far, the footage turned out okay. I don't know entirely sure how the full render will turn out. I do have some thoughts on the process, but overall, so far it's positive. But let me go ahead and walk you guys through what I experienced using the process and this camera. Okay, so after using this camera, I used it for about, I want to say 20 minutes or so before the camera did run out of battery. Not the camera's fault, I just didn't charge it. It had about 20% of battery, and that lasted about 20 minutes filming at 4K 60. Now, the editing was a little more complicated than I would have liked. I used DaVinci Resolve to edit videos, and as I could tell, there wasn't a direct download for a plugin to reframe the 360 video in DaVinci. There might be, but it wasn't obvious, at least on the Insta360 site. There might be a third-party app, but I just couldn't find it. So that means I had to use the Insta360 reframe software, so I had to download a second software, which adds a little bit of complication to this, but really the software was pretty easy to use, so I'm not super opposed to it. Inside the software, it let me do things like lens correction, it let me do reframe, which I didn't watch any tutorials or anything like that. I just figured it out. And the keyframing was probably the easiest keyframing that I've seen on any other video editing software. Basically, you just put a point where you want the camera to look, and it just looks there, and it does a nice simple keyframe transition to that area. Overall, it is pretty positive. The software is pretty easy to use. The biggest downside that I would have to say is you have to download the second software, and on the app on your phone for the reframe software, you can do something called a picture-in-picture, which basically allows me to do a front view and a back view automatically using their AI or whatever they want to call it, and that makes it pretty easy for me. But the downside is that is only available on the phone. I couldn't find it anywhere in the computer software, which just adds another step. Either way, it's not easy to do a front and back view. Basically, what I ended up doing is on the computer, I just rendered a front view and a back view in the same file that I can just chop and overlay. So A little bit difficult, not too crazy. It just probably adds about 30 minutes to the editing time for the front and back view. I'd say it's much easier than doing something like using 2 or 3 GoPros and then having to stitch that footage together. Having one camera to do it all, I would say, is pretty dang good. Now, everything does look kind of fish-eyed with this camera. GoPros, you can minimize that. This, I think you're gonna lose quite a bit of quality the more you zoom in, but we'll see what the full render looks like, and you guys will have seen it before I have because obviously it played in this video. The other biggest downside was the audio quality. They did have a lot of cool features like voice isolation in the Reframe app, but I don't think it's going to be that good. In the future, I might want to run at least a microphone, whether it records on the mic and I pull the audio off of that, or hopefully I can hook it directly to the Insta360 through something like USB-C. But my initial impressions are it's pretty good. I wouldn't say it is a catch-all for cameras. It's something that is a nice addition to a bigger camera, something like this, my Canon that I shoot on, for motorcycles or exo vehicles like this. Inside a car, I might use something more like this in addition to the 360 camera, but as the action cameras go, I think that this is probably going to be the future of action cameras. I'll keep you guys updated. I'm gonna keep testing with this. I have this camera for the whole month, maybe even longer than that, and I might end up buying one, so we'll see how good I can get with using this camera in other videos. If you guys have experience with the X4, I would love to hear you guys' advice down below. Maybe there are some things that I should try out that I didn't catch in this video. If that's the case, be sure to leave a comment so I can try that in a future video with the Goblin. Overall though, I'm gonna go ahead and recommend this camera. I think it's a pretty good camera. I wouldn't say it is 10 out of 10 perfect yet, but it's still fairly new. So I'm gonna leave a link to it down below along with the mount that I used on my Goblin. And so maybe you guys can pick one of these up rather than about 3 or 4 GoPros. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope to see you guys in the next video. Again, it is Vlogmas, so be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of the holiday videos we got coming out here soon. And with that said, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye. Okay, so I have fully switched to the X4 now.